I've been a truck driver for 20 years, and I'll be honest, the road can get lonely. But every time I'd come home, that feeling would vanish because Lisa, my wife of 18 years, was there to greet me. At least, that's how it used to feel. Together, we built a life, 3 kids, a house, and what I thought was a strong marriage. Our kids, Jake, 16, Mia, 13, and Emma, 6, are my world. I've worked myself to the bone to give them a good life. I'm not a flashy guy. No fancy vacations or expensive hobbies. All I've ever wanted was to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. That's why I've stayed on the road so long, sacrificing time at home to provide for them. But apparently, my sacrifices weren't enough. About 2 years ago, Lisa changed. At first, it was small stuff. She stopped calling me as much while I was out on runs. When she did, she always seemed distracted, like she was checking her watch or waiting for me to hang up. "Sorry, babe, the kids are driving me nuts," she'd say, her voice rushed. Then there were her new routines, gym sessions 3 times a week, a sudden love for book clubs, and a newfound obsession with me time. I'm not the type to discourage my wife from doing her own thing, but it didn't feel right. The gym memberships and book clubs were new, sure, but they felt like an excuse. Something about the way she talked about them, vague and overly rehearsed, made me uneasy. Whenever I asked about her day, her answers were short, almost offensive. If I said, "What book are you reading?" she'd say, "Oh, it's just some romance thing, nothing special." If I asked how the gym was, she'd roll her eyes and say, "You really want to talk about cardio?" The phone habits were the biggest red flag. Lisa's phone was never out of her hand. She used to leave it charging on the kitchen counter, but now it followed her everywhere, bathroom, bedroom, even to the laundry room. If I walked by, she'd lock the screen so fast it was like muscle memory. I joked about her being secretive once, and she laughed it off with, "Please, like you'd care about my group chats with the girls." But the thing that hit me the hardest was Emma. Jake and Mia looked just like me. Dark hair, brown eyes, and even my awkward smile. Emma? She's got blonde hair and bright blue eyes. People always joked, she must take after Lisa's side. But something in my gut always nagged at me. I tried to shake it off because the idea of her not being mine was too painful to even consider. I mean, Lisa wouldn't do that to me, right? Then, one night, everything cracked wide open. I'd just gotten home from a 3-day haul. It was late, around 11 p.m., and I decided to sit in the garage for a bit before going inside. I could hear voices through the open living room window. Jake and Mia were talking, their tone hushed like they didn't want to wake anyone. "She doesn't even look like Dad," Mia whispered. "Sure. You're gonna get us in trouble," Jake hissed back. "Well, it's true. Mom said not to talk about it, but it's so obvious." "Do you think Dad knows?" Jake sighed. "I don't know. Just don't say anything. It'll only make things worse." I froze. My chest felt like it was caving in. "She doesn't even look like Dad." The words rang in my head like a siren. What the hell did they mean? I went inside quietly, pretending I hadn't heard anything. Lisa was already asleep, her phone charging on her nightstand. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her. For the first time, I didn't see my wife. I saw a stranger. The next morning, I decided to start digging. I didn't want to confront Lisa yet. I needed proof, something concrete. My first move was to keep things normal, to act like nothing had changed. Over breakfast, I kissed her cheek and asked about her day. She smiled and said, "Just the usual, gym, groceries, picking up the kids. What about you?" I lied. "Just a short haul to Dallas. I'll be back by tomorrow." Her face lit up, which hurt more than it should have. "Oh, good. Drive safe." As soon as I left, I parked down the street and waited. Sure enough, about an hour later, Lisa left the house in her gym clothes. I followed her at a distance, my heart pounding like I was chasing a criminal. Instead of heading to the gym, she drove to a park on the other side of town. She parked her car, got out, and walked toward the picnic tables near the playground. I couldn't see who she was meeting, but I stayed in my truck, my eyes glued to her. She sat down, her posture relaxed, like she wasn't hiding a damn thing. I didn't recognize the person sitting across from her. Not yet. I didn't approach her that day. I needed more time, more proof. I knew Lisa had secrets, and I was determined to uncover every last one of them. After that first trip to the park, I felt like a stranger in my own life. I knew Lisa was lying to me, but I didn't know the full extent of it yet. My stomach churned every time I thought about her sitting at that picnic table, laughing and relaxed. Who was she meeting? What the hell was going on? I needed answers, but I also needed to be smart about it. I couldn't just burst in and accuse her. Not yet. Lisa was sharp when it came to deflecting. I'd seen her do it before, turning things around on me during arguments, making me feel like I was the problem. If I came at her without solid proof, she'd find a way to make me doubt myself. The next morning, I decided to push her a little, just enough to see how she'd react. Over breakfast, I leaned back in my chair, sipping coffee. So, what's the plan for today? Another gym session? Lisa glanced up from her plate, her expression casual, but I caught the slight twitch in her mouth. Yeah. Why? Just curious. You've been really consistent with it lately. Must be nice to have that kind of routine. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It is. I wish you had time for the gym. Maybe you wouldn't be so sore all the time. That stung. I'd been hauling freight across the country for 2 decades, sacrificing my body for our family. Her little jab felt deliberate. I let it slide, though, because I wasn't done yet. Maybe I'll join you sometime, I said, keeping my tone light. Could be fun. Lisa's fork paused halfway to her mouth. For a split second, her mask slipped, and I saw panic flash across her face. She recovered quickly, though, setting her fork down and laughing. Oh, come on, Mike. You'd hate it. It's just cardio and a bunch of women gossiping in yoga pants. Not exactly your scene. Maybe, I said with a shrug, but it might be nice to spend more time together. Lisa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're sweet, but I promise it's boring. Let me have this one thing, okay? I nodded, pretending to drop it, but inside I was boiling. That little moment of panic told me everything I needed to know. Lisa didn't want me anywhere near her gym sessions. That afternoon, while Lisa was out, I searched the house for anything that might give me a clue about what she was up to. Her phone was password protected, of course, but I found an old tablet in the back of the closet. It was linked to the same account as her phone, and to my surprise, she hadn't logged out of anything. I started with her texts. Most of them were harmless. Chats with her friends, messages from the kids, but then I found a conversation that made my blood run cold. It was with someone saved as R in her contacts. The messages weren't explicit, but they were intimate. Lisa, can't wait to see you later. Same spot? R, of course. Counting down the minutes. Lisa, you're so bad, I can only stay for an hour, though. Mike's back tomorrow. R, no problem. An hour's all I need. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the tablet. Who the hell was R? I scrolled up through the conversation, but there wasn't much history. It looked like Lisa had deleted most of the messages, but what was left told me enough. This wasn't just some innocent friendship. I slammed the tablet shut and sat there for a minute, trying to calm myself down. The anger was overwhelming, but so was the pain. Lisa wasn't just lying to me. She was making plans behind my back, laughing about it, and treating me like a fool. That night, I didn't say a word about what I'd found. I couldn't. My mind was spinning, trying to piece everything together. Instead, I decided to watch her even closer. The next day, Lisa left for her usual gym session, and I followed her again. This time, she didn't go to the park. She went to a cheap motel on the edge of town. I parked a few spaces away and waited, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Lisa got out of her car, checked her phone, and walked inside. 10 minutes later, a man showed up in a black truck. He parked next to her car, got out, and headed into the motel. I didn't see his face, but I recognized his build and the way he walked. My stomach dropped. It couldn't be. There was no way. I stayed in my truck, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Part of me wanted to storm in there, to catch them in the act, but I knew I needed to wait. If I confronted Lisa now, she'd lie, twist the story, and make me out to be the bad guy. When the man left an hour later, I finally got a good look at him. My blood turned to ice. It was Ryan, my childhood best friend. Ryan, the man I grew up with. My best friend since middle school. The guy who was the best man at my wedding. He was the one who held my son Jake in the hospital when he was born and who always showed up at family BBQs with a six-pack and bad jokes. And now, he was walking out of a cheap motel where he had just been with my wife. I sat there in my truck, frozen. My mind couldn't keep up with my emotions. Rage, betrayal, disbelief, and pain all hit me at once. Ryan got into his truck, looked around casually, and drove off like it was just another day. The weight of it all hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just some random guy Lisa was sneaking around with. It was someone I trusted, someone who had been in my life for decades. I felt sick to my stomach. Lisa came out about 5 minutes later, her hair slightly messed up and her makeup smudged. She didn't even bother fixing herself before getting into her car and driving home. I followed her at a distance, my thoughts racing. How long had this been going on? Did Ryan know Emma might be his? Did my family know? Did Jake and Mia overhear something from Lisa or Ryan and put it together before I did? When Lisa got home, she acted like nothing was wrong. She gave Emma a hug, asked Jake about his homework, and joked with Mia about her messy room. Watching her play the role of a perfect wife and mother made my blood boil. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I waited until the kids went to bed, and then I confronted her. Lisa was in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone, when I walked in. I didn't even try to ease into it. "Where were you today, Lisa?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. She barely looked up. "The gym, like I told you." "Why?" I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. "Don't lie to me." That got her attention. She set her phone down and frowned. "What's your problem?" "My problem?" I laughed bitterly. "You think I'm stupid? I know where you were. I followed you." Her eyes widened for just a second before she tried to recover. "What the hell are you talking about, Mike? You've been working too hard. You're paranoid." "Paranoid?" I snapped. "I saw you go into that motel, Lisa. I saw Ryan meet you there. So don't you dare sit there and act like I'm crazy." Lisa's face turned pale, and she opened her mouth, but no words came out. For once, she didn't have a snappy comeback or a quick excuse. "Say something," I demanded. She shook her head, her voice trembling. "It's not what you think." "Oh, cut the bullshit." I slammed my hand on the counter, making her jump. "Don't you dare insult me by trying to spin this. You were screwing my best friend in some sleazy motel while I was out busting my ass for this family." Lisa started to cry, but her tears only made me angrier. "Mike, please, just let me explain." "Explain what? That you've been lying to me? That you've been cheating on me with Ryan? How long? Lisa, how long has this been going on?" She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room like she was searching for an escape. "A year," she finally whispered. "A year?" I yelled, my voice echoing through the kitchen. "You've been doing this for a year? With Ryan? Jesus Christ, Lisa." She wiped her tears and tried to steady her voice. "It wasn't supposed to happen. It just did. We didn't mean for it to go this far." I let out a hollow laugh. "Didn't mean for it to go this far? What the hell does that even mean? Did you trip and fall into bed with him?" She glared at me through her tears, her defensive side kicking in. "Don't talk to me like that, Mike. You don't understand." "Oh, I understand plenty." I cut her off. "I understand that you're a liar and a cheater. I understand that you've been sneaking around behind my back while I've been working my ass off to support you and the kids. And I understand that Emma might not even be mine." That last part hit her like a slap. Her face crumbled, and she started sobbing. "Mike, please, don't bring Emma into this." "Don't bring her into this?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "She's already in it, Lisa. She's in it because of you. So tell me the truth. Is she mine?" Lisa didn't answer right away, and the silence was unbearable. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know." Her words were like a knife to my chest. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the counter to keep from falling. "You don't know?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Lisa took a step toward me, reaching out, but I pulled away. "Mike, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." I stared at her, my vision blurred with tears of anger and betrayal. You didn't just hurt me, Lisa. You destroyed everything. Our marriage, our family, everything. I couldn't stay in that room any longer. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, leaving Lisa sobbing in the kitchen. I drove aimlessly for hours, trying to process everything I just learned. Ryan, my wife, Emma, a year of lies. And the worst part? The entire time, my gut told me there was still more to the story. This wasn't over. Not even close. I spent the night in my truck, parked in an empty lot at the edge of town. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was Lisa in that motel with Ryan, my best friend, my brother. And the way she said, "I don't know," when I asked if Emma was mine, it was a gut punch that wouldn't stop hurting. The sun was barely up when I decided to head back home. I wasn't ready to face Lisa, but I couldn't leave the kids wondering where I was. They didn't deserve to get caught in the crossfire of their mother's betrayal. When I walked in, the house was quiet. Lisa must have still been asleep, or hiding. Jake was in the kitchen making toast, his headphones in, bobbing his head to some music. He didn't even notice me come in until I cleared my throat. He jumped, pulling his headphones off. "Oh, hey, Dad. You're back early." "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Had some stuff to take care of." Jake nodded, not pressing further. He was a good kid, but he wasn't oblivious. He knew something was off. I could see it in the way he avoided eye contact. "Where's your mom?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "She's upstairs. I think she was crying last night." "Yeah? Did she say why?" Jake hesitated, his eyes darting toward the floor. "Not really. Just said she and you had a fight." I wanted to scream, to tell him exactly why she was crying, but I couldn't do that to him. Not yet. Instead, I nodded and ruffled his hair. "Don't worry about it. Go on. Finish your breakfast." He gave me a cautious look but didn't push. As he left the kitchen, I sat down at the table, my head in my hands. How was I supposed to hold it together for the kids when everything was falling apart? That afternoon, I decided to talk to Mia. She was more observant than Jake, always picking up on things others missed. If there was something she knew, she wouldn't let it slip so easily. She was in her room, scrolling on her phone when I knocked on the door. "Come in," she said, not looking up. I sat on the edge of her bed. "Hey, kiddo, can we talk?" Mia glanced at me, her brows furrowing. "Is this about you and Mom?" That caught me off guard. "What makes you say that?" She sighed, setting her phone down. "Because you guys have been weird lately, and you were gone all night. Did something happen?" I hesitated. I didn't want to dump everything on her, but I couldn't just brush it off either. "Yeah, something happened. Your mom and I are dealing with some things right now. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Mia shifted uncomfortably. "Okay." I took a deep breath, bracing myself. "Does Emma look like me?" Her eyes widened, and she immediately looked down, fiddling with the edge of her blanket. "Mia," I said gently, "I need you to tell me the truth." She bit her lip, her voice barely above a whisper. "I mean, she doesn't." "Not really. And you've noticed that before, haven't you?" Mia nodded slowly. "Yeah, but Mom said," she said sometimes kids take after other relatives, like grandma or something. "Do you believe that?" Mia's face flushed, and she looked away. "I don't know. It's just, I don't want to make you mad." I leaned closer, putting a hand on her shoulder. "You won't make me mad, sweetheart. I promise." Mia hesitated, then sighed. "Okay. Sometimes. Jake and I talked about it. How Emma doesn't look like you, and how Mom acts weird about it. But we didn't want to say anything because we didn't want to hurt you." My heart felt like it was being ripped out of my chest. My kids had noticed something was wrong long before I did, and they'd been carrying that weight because they didn't want to hurt me. I pulled Mia into a hug, holding her tight. "I'm so sorry, kiddo. I should have seen it sooner." She hugged me back, her voice trembling. "Dad, is everything going to be okay?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. I promise." That night, I couldn't stay silent any longer. After the kids went to bed, I found Lisa in the living room. She was sitting on the couch, clutching her phone like a lifeline. When she saw me, her face crumpled. Mike, please, I held up a hand to stop her. Don't say another word unless it's the truth. Lisa stared at me, tears streaming down her face. I don't even know where to start. How about this? I said, my voice cold. Does Ryan know Emma might be his? Lisa's gasp told me everything I needed to know. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Oh my God, I whispered, the weight of her silence crushing me. He knows, doesn't he? He's known this whole time. She nodded, barely able to speak. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Mike. I swear. It wasn't supposed to happen. How long have you been lying to me, Lisa? How long has Ryan known Emma might be his? She looked up, her face pale and broken. Since the beginning. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. Not only had my wife betrayed me, but my so-called best friend had known the truth this entire time. My own family had been built on a lie. Get out, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Lisa blinked, shocked. What? Get out, I repeated, louder this time. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here tonight. Mike, please, we can talk? There's nothing to talk about, I snapped. Pack a bag and leave. Now. Lisa stared at me for a moment before finally nodding. She got up and headed upstairs, her shoulders slumped in defeat. As I watched her leave, I made a silent promise to myself. I wasn't going to let her, or Ryan, get away with this. They destroyed my life, and they were going to pay. You're absolutely right. If Emma is 6 years old, Lisa and Ryan's affair couldn't have started just a year ago. Let me revise this part of the story to align with that timeline while keeping the story intense and engaging. Here's the corrected continuation. Lisa left the house that night without much of a fight. She threw some clothes into a bag, muttered something about staying at her sister's, and walked out. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I felt like if I opened my mouth, I might scream or break down entirely. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. That night, I couldn't sleep. The anger wasn't fading. It was growing. Ryan wasn't just some random guy. He was my best friend, the man I trusted with my life. I couldn't stop replaying the moments when I'd unknowingly invited him into my home, laughed with him, confided in him, and let him be around my children. The fact that Emma was 6 years old meant the betrayal had started far earlier than Lisa admitted. If Ryan and Lisa had been sneaking around for a year, that didn't explain Emma's existence. Which meant one thing. This affair had been going on long before that. The thought made my stomach churn, but I needed proof. I wasn't going to take Lisa's word for anything anymore. And I wasn't going to let Ryan slither out of this without facing the consequences. The next morning, I made 2 calls. The first was to a lawyer. I wanted to know my options, especially regarding Emma. I explained the situation, leaving out the emotional details, and asked if I could demand a paternity test. The lawyer didn't sugarcoat it. You're legally Emma's father, he said. Even if a test shows you're not biologically related, the courts don't take that lightly. If you've been acting as her father, you're financially responsible for her. But if you want the truth, you can request a test. Just be prepared for the fallout. Fallout. The word stuck in my head. Fallout wasn't coming. It was already here. The second call was to Ryan. Me, hey man. Need to talk. You free tonight? Ryan, yeah. Everything okay? Me, not really. Meet me at the diner at 7. I've got some stuff to get off my chest. Ryan agreed, but I could sense the hesitation in his voice. Maybe he knew. Maybe Lisa had already called him to warn him. Either way, I didn't care. I was ready. I arrived at the diner early, sitting in a corner booth with my phone propped up on the napkin holder. I had the recording app running before Ryan even walked in. He showed up right on time, looking casual in jeans and a t-shirt, like this was just a regular hangout. He slid into the booth across from me and gave me a cautious smile. Hey man, he said. What's going on? I stared at him for a long moment, letting the silence stretch. Finally, I leaned forward and said, How long have you been sleeping with my wife? The smile dropped from his face. What? You heard me, I said coldly. Don't play dumb, Ryan. I know about you and Lisa. I know about the motel, the park, all of it. So, how long? Ryan's face turned pale, and he opened his mouth like he was going to deny it, but then he closed it again. He looked down at the table, his hands fidgeting. Mike, don't you dare say you didn't mean for it to happen, I snapped. You don't accidentally screw your best friend's wife. So just tell me the truth. He sighed, running a hand over his face. It started 7 years ago, he admitted quietly. 7 years. My stomach dropped. That meant it started before Emma was born. And let me guess, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Lisa got pregnant, and there was a chance Emma wasn't mine. But you both decided to keep your mouth shut and let me raise her anyway. Ryan didn't say anything, which was answer enough. You knew, I said, my voice trembling with rage. You knew she might be yours, and you let me think she was mine. You let me love her, take care of her, and sacrifice for her. All while you played house with my wife behind my back. It wasn't like that, Ryan said weakly. Then what the hell was it like? I shouted, slamming my hand on the table. The couple sitting a few booths over glanced at us nervously, but I didn't care. Ryan leaned forward, his voice low and desperate. Mike, I didn't want to hurt you. I swear. But Lisa, she didn't want to break up the family. She said it was better this way. For Emma. For everyone. I laughed bitterly. Oh, that's rich. You and Lisa were so concerned about the family while you were screwing behind my back. Spare me the bullshit, Ryan. Mike, I'm sorry, he said, his voice cracking. I never wanted it to go this far. Well, it did, I said coldly. And now you're going to deal with the consequences. I grabbed my phone, stopped the recording, and stood up. Ryan stayed in the booth, staring at the table like the coward he was. As I walked out of the diner, I felt a strange sense of clarity. Lisa and Ryan had built their relationship on lies, but I was done being in the dark. I had proof now, and I was going to use it. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I spent the next few days putting my plan into motion. Lisa tried calling and texting me, but I ignored every single attempt. I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses or apologies. Not yet. Ryan stayed quiet, probably trying to figure out what I was going to do. My focus was on the kids. Jake and Mia deserved the truth, but Emma was the hardest part. She was only 6, completely innocent in all of this. No matter what happened next, I couldn't let her suffer for the choices Lisa and Ryan had made. The first step was the paternity test. I scheduled an appointment without telling Lisa. I swabbed Emma's cheek myself, telling her it was for a fun science project. She giggled, completely unaware of the storm brewing around her. My heart broke a little when she smiled up at me, her big blue eyes shining with trust. But I needed to know. I couldn't live with the uncertainty anymore. A week later, the results came in. I sat in my truck outside the testing clinic, staring at the envelope in my hands. My palms were sweaty, my chest tight. Part of me didn't want to open it. What if the results confirmed what I already suspected? What if Emma wasn't mine? But I had to know. With a deep breath, I tore the envelope open and scanned the results. Probability of paternity, 0%. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. My hands trembled, and I felt the air leave my lungs. Emma wasn't mine. For 6 years, I had loved her, raised her, and sacrificed for her, thinking she was my daughter. And the whole time, Lisa and Ryan had known the truth. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't let them fall. I couldn't afford to break down, not yet. I needed to stay strong. For Jake, for Mia, and even for Emma. That evening, I called a family meeting. Lisa wasn't invited. Jake and Mia sat on the couch, looking worried. Emma was playing with her dolls on the floor, completely oblivious to the tension in the room. What's going on, Dad? Jake asked. Is this about Mom? I nodded, sitting down across from them. Yeah, it is. I need to tell you both the truth about what's been going on. Jake and Mia exchanged nervous glances, and I could see the fear in their eyes. They weren't stupid. They'd known something was wrong for a while. I took a deep breath and started. Your mom has been lying to me. For years. She's been having an affair with Ryan. The room went silent. Jake's jaw dropped, and Mia covered her mouth with her hands. What? Jake finally said, his voice shaking. Ryan? Uncle Ryan? Yeah, I said bitterly. The man I thought was my best friend. Mia looked like she was about to cry. But how long? 7 years, I said, my voice thick with anger. It started before Emma was born. Both kids froze, their eyes widening in realization. Mia was the first to speak. Is Emma? I nodded, my throat tight. She's not mine. Jake stood up, pacing the room. Are you serious right now, Ryan? I can't believe this. How could he, do this to you? To us? I don't know, I admitted. I've been asking myself the same thing. Mia was crying now, wiping her face with her sleeve. What's going to happen to Emma? Are you going to leave her? That question hit me like a gut punch. I looked down at Emma, who was still happily playing with her dolls, completely unaware of the bombshell that had just been dropped. No, I said firmly. Emma might not be my biological daughter, but I've been her dad her whole life. I'm not going to abandon her. This isn't her fault. Jake stopped pacing and looked at me, his expression softening. She doesn't know, does she? No, I said. And she's not going to. Not right now. She's too young to understand, and I don't want her to feel like she's lost her dad. But things are going to change. What about Mom? Mia asked, her voice small. I clenched my fists, the anger bubbling up again. I'm divorcing her, and I'm going to make damn sure Ryan doesn't get off easy either. Jake nodded, his jaw tightening. Good. She doesn't deserve you, Dad. Mia sniffled, wiping her tears. What do we do now? We stick together, I said. No matter what happens, we're a family, and no one's going to take that away from us. After the meeting, I called Lisa. You need to come home, I said coldly. Mike, I don't think. Don't argue with me, Lisa. Get here. Now. An hour later, she walked through the door, her face pale and her eyes red from crying. Jake and Mia had gone to their rooms, and Emma was asleep. It was just the two of us. I didn't waste any time. I threw the paternity results on the table in front of her. Explain this. Lisa picked up the paper, her hands shaking. When she read the results, she burst into tears. Mike, I'm so sorry. Don't, I said, cutting her off. Don't you dare sit there and cry like you're the victim. I want the truth, Lisa. All of it. How long have you and Ryan been lying to me? She sobbed, trying to speak through her tears. Since the beginning. I knew there was a chance Emma wasn't yours, but I didn't want to lose you. You thought you'd just let me raise another man's child without telling me? I snapped. You thought you'd let me build my life around a lie? Mike, please, she begged. I love you. You don't love me, I said coldly. If you did, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have destroyed our family. Lisa fell silent, her sobs filling the room. I stood there, staring at the woman I thought I knew, feeling nothing but disgust. This marriage is over, I said finally, and I'm going to make sure Ryan pays for what he's done. You two deserve each other. Lisa looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. What about Emma? I'll take care of her, I said. But you're done. Pack your things and get out. Lisa didn't argue. She knew she'd lost. As I watched her walk out the door for the last time, I felt a strange sense of calm. The storm wasn't over, but I was finally in control. And I wasn't going to stop until I got justice for everything she and Ryan had taken from me. With Lisa gone, the house felt eerily quiet. I wasn't grieving her absence. I was relieved. The silence gave me the space I needed to plan my next move. Divorce papers were already in the works, and I wasn't going to drag my feet. I wanted this chapter of my life closed as quickly as possible. But that wasn't enough. Lisa might have been out of my house, but Ryan wasn't out of my life. Not yet. That man had stolen years from me, not just with Lisa, but with Emma too. I'd raised her as my own, and no matter what the DNA said, I was her dad. The thought of Ryan waltzing in and trying to play father made my blood boil. He was going to pay for what he'd done. The first thing I did was contact a private investigator. I needed dirt on Ryan. Anything I could use to keep him far away from Emma and my family. I told the PI everything, from the affair to the paternity issue. He promised to start digging immediately. Next, I filed for full custody of Emma. Legally, I was her father, and I wasn't about to let Ryan swoop in and claim her. My lawyer assured me I had a strong case. The courts didn't look kindly on parents who engaged in infidelity or destabilized the family unit. I also made sure to cover my bases financially. Lisa wasn't going to bleed me dry in the divorce. My lawyer suggested freezing joint accounts to prevent her from draining them. I followed his advice without hesitation. A week later, the PI called with an update. "Mike, you're not going to believe this," he said. "Ryan's got a history." "What do you mean?" I asked, gripping the phone tightly. "He's had other affairs. At least 2 that I can confirm, both with married women. One of them resulted in a pregnancy, but the woman's husband never found out." I leaned back in my chair, the weight of the revelation hitting me. This wasn't just about me. Ryan was a serial homewrecker. "Does Lisa know about this?" I asked. "No idea," the PI said, "but I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't. Guys like him are good at covering their tracks until someone starts digging." "Send me everything you've got," I said. "I'm going to need it." Armed with this new information, I decided it was time to confront Ryan one last time. Not at a diner this time, but on my turf, my home. I called him and told him to come over, using Emma as the excuse. "Mike, I don't know if that's a good idea," he said hesitantly. "It's not a request," I said sharply. "You owe me this." He reluctantly agreed, and 2 hours later, he was standing on my front porch. When I opened the door, Ryan looked nervous. He was fidgeting, avoiding eye contact. "What's this about, Mike?" he asked. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. He walked in, glancing around like he expected an ambush. I led him to the living room and gestured for him to sit. "You're here because I've got some things to say," I began, sitting across from him. "And you're going to listen." Ryan nodded, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else but here. "I know about the other women," I said, my voice cold. His eyes widened. "What?" "Don't play dumb. The affairs, the other kid, everything. I had someone look into you, Ryan. You're not just a liar. You're a predator. You go after married women, break up families, and leave chaos in your wake." Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand to stop him. "I don't care about your excuses," I said. "Here's how this is going to go. You're going to stay the hell away from Emma. You're not her father. You never were, and you never will be. Legally, I'm her dad, and I'll fight you in court if I have to." "Mike, come on," he said, his voice pleading. "I never meant to hurt you." "Don't," I snapped. "Don't you dare say that again. You meant to lie. You meant to sneak around. You made those choices, Ryan. You don't get to act like the victim now." He slumped in his chair, his face pale. "What do you want from me?" "Simple," I said. "You stay out of my life. You stay out of Emma's life. You don't contact Lisa, and you sure as hell don't come near my kids. If you do, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are and what you've done. I've got all the evidence I need to ruin you." Ryan sat there in silence, staring at the floor. I could see the defeat in his posture. He knew I wasn't bluffing. "Do we have an understanding?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get it." "Good," I said, standing up. "Now get out of my house." Ryan didn't argue. He got up and left without another word. As I watched him drive away, I felt a sense of closure. I wasn't naive enough to think he wouldn't try something eventually, but for now, he was out of my life. The fallout was far from over. Lisa was still trying to repair her image with the kids, sending them texts and calling them constantly. Jake wanted nothing to do with her, and Mia was torn. Emma, of course, didn't understand why her mom wasn't around anymore. One night, as I was tucking Emma into bed, she looked up at me with those big blue eyes and asked, "Daddy, is Mommy coming home soon?" I forced a smile, even though it hurt. "Mommy's staying somewhere else for now, sweetheart. But I'm here, okay? I'll always be here." She smiled sleepily and hugged me. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too," I whispered, my throat tight. No matter what happened, I was going to protect Emma and my family. Lisa and Ryan might have destroyed my trust, but they weren't going to take my kids from me. This wasn't the life I planned, but it was the life I had now, and I was going to rebuild it, brick by brick. The weeks after Ryan's departure were a blur of lawyers, court filings, and emotionally charged conversations with the kids. I was mentally and physically drained, but there was no room for self-pity. Every time I looked at Emma or saw Jake and Mia struggling to process what had happened, I knew I had to keep moving forward. I couldn't let Lisa or Ryan take anything else from us. The divorce process was as ugly as I expected. Lisa tried to play the victim, claiming the affair was a mistake and that she didn't want to destroy the family. But I wasn't having it. My lawyer had a rock-solid case, and the paternity results gave me the leverage I needed to push for full custody of the kids. One evening, Lisa called me. "Mike, can we talk?" she asked. Her voice was soft, almost timid. "We're talking now," I said curtly. "I mean, in person. Please." I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to give her the satisfaction, but the other part of me wanted to hear what excuse she'd come up with this time. "Fine," I said. "Tomorrow, noon, at the diner." When I arrived at the diner the next day, Lisa was already there, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a coffee cup. She looked exhausted, but I didn't care. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. I slid into the seat across from her, keeping my face neutral. "What do you want, Lisa?" She looked down at her cup, her fingers trembling slightly. "I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. I've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I want to fix this. I want to fix us." I stared at her, incredulous. "Fix us? There is no us, Lisa. Not anymore." She reached across the table, her eyes pleading. "Mike, please. I love you. I made a mistake, but it doesn't have to end like this. We can go to counseling, rebuild what we had." I pulled my hand away, cutting her off. "Don't. You don't get to sit here and pretend this was a one-time thing. You had an affair for 7 years. 7 years. That's not a mistake, Lisa. That's a choice. Over and over again, you chose to betray me. You chose to lie to me, to let me raise a child that wasn't mine, and to let Ryan walk around like a damn saint. You don't love me, Lisa. You love yourself." Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing. "Mike, I swear, I never wanted to hurt you." "Stop," I said firmly. "I don't want to hear it. You hurt me. You hurt Jake and Mia. And whether you want to admit it or not, you hurt Emma too. You destroyed this family, and now you want a clean slate? It doesn't work that way." Lisa wiped her tears, her expression shifting from sorrow to desperation. "What about Emma? You said you'd never leave her. She needs her mom, Mike. Emma will always have a parent who loves her," I said. "But it's not going to be you." Lisa gasped, her face crumbling. "You can't do that." "I already have," I said coldly. "The courts will decide custody, and I've got plenty of evidence to prove that you're not fit to be her primary parent. You chose Ryan over this family, and now you'll have to live with the consequences." Lisa slumped back in her seat, defeated. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control. With Lisa out of the picture, I focused on Ryan. I wasn't satisfied with just cutting him out of my life. I wanted him to feel the consequences of his actions. The private investigator had dug up even more dirt on him. One of his previous affairs had ended in a restraining order after the woman's husband found out. There were also allegations of workplace misconduct that had been swept under the rug. This wasn't just about me anymore. Ryan was a predator, and he needed to be exposed. I started by sending everything the PI had uncovered to his employer. Ryan worked in sales, and his company prided itself on its family values. I made sure they saw every text, every photo, and every detail of his sordid history. It wasn't long before I heard through the grapevine that Ryan had been fired. Next, I sent the evidence to his wife. Yes, Ryan was married. I hadn't realized it at first, but the PI confirmed it during his investigation. His wife, Jennifer, had no idea what kind of man she was married to. When I dropped the truth on her, she was devastated, but grateful. She filed for divorce immediately. Ryan's life fell apart piece by piece, and I didn't feel the slightest bit guilty. He had destroyed mine, and now he was finally paying the price. The custody battle was the final hurdle. Lisa fought hard to keep some semblance of control, but the evidence was overwhelmingly in my favor. The courts awarded me full custody of Jake, Mia, and Emma, with Lisa granted limited visitation rights. When the judge announced the decision, Lisa broke down in tears. I didn't gloat. I just walked out of the courtroom, holding my kids close. Months later, life started to feel normal again. Jake and Mia were doing better, slowly adjusting to the new reality. Emma still didn't know the full truth, and I wasn't planning on telling her anytime soon. For now, she was happy, and that was all that mattered. As for me, I wasn't the same man I was before all of this. I was stronger, tougher, and more protective of my family. Lisa and Ryan had taken so much from me, but they hadn't won. I was still standing, and I was still fighting. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Trust is fragile, but strength comes from picking up the pieces and building something new. And that's exactly what I was doing, brick by brick. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to Cheating Storytelling so you never miss an update on more jaw-dropping real-life stories. Catch you in the next video.